it's Marley from the Energy Boutique with your energy and ascension forecast for Sunday, May 18th to Saturday, May 22nd. So last week, of course, we had a banger of a week with that full moon in Scorpio popping off. And of course, it created quite a ripple effect, not only in our emotional realms, but in our physical realms as well. Now, again, that full moon was a full illumination of hidden information, hidden details of what needs to end and die before a resurrection, a rebirth could actually begin. Considering the fact that this full moon in Scorpio was the doozy that it was, we've been feeling the reverberatory effects of that particular lunation for this past week. And of course, we moved into the very last week of Taurus season, that grounded energy. And at this particular point in time, we are definitely seeing the death, the endings, the closures in order for something new to grow. We had Mercury and Jupiter pop off, really kind of scrambling the headspace, really kind of made a lot of people cray. And if you're joining me here Friday evening, first of all, thank you so much for being here in the chat. But secondary to that, tomorrow, we have the Sun and Uranus coming together for their annual conjunction, and that is going to be a jolt of energy as well, a destabilizing jolt of energy that is going to illuminate for us where it is that we have to stop resisting, making the changes that we know that we need to make. There's going to be an element of a shakeup, of a wake up in order for us to see things from a different perspective, for us to detach very quickly from a lot of the things that we've been desperately holding on to. And it is going to kind of set the scene for what is going to be a little bit of a cray-cray type of week. I say that because we're in a very dramatic transitional week coming at us. First of all, we kick off the second last quarter moon in Aquarius. Last lunar cycle, we had the last quarter moon pop off at like a 1 degree in Aquarius. This time around, and again, we're under the new moon Taurus lunar cycle this time around, we have the last quarter moon popping off at 29 degrees in Aquarius. That 29 degrees is no joke. It is a critical crisis degree. The last quarter moon of any lunar cycle is a realization when looking back specifically to the new moon in Taurus, but even further than that, taking us back to Aquarius season, on what needs to end and die, what is no longer in alignment, what we no longer resonate with, and we begin the process of elimination. The last quarter moon to the new moon in Gemini that will be popping off on May 26th, that is the process of elimination. That is the releasing phase. That is the purging phase. And so again, the Aquarius energy has us operating from the highest realm of our intelligence, acting as the observer, coming up with some creative solutions, thinking outside of the box on what we can do to make the changes that we know that we need to make to eliminate, release, remove some of these aspects that are getting in the way from us moving on and moving forward. So, of course, that is a big deal. That is going to be a high voltage energy, again, feeding off of the Sun and Uranus's conjunction here on the 17th. This is popping off on the 20th. What we also have coming up here on the 20th is the Sun shifting into Gemini season. So again, air and air action. We are moving out of the earth on earth that we've been sitting in. Again, very present here in the physical body, very present and aware of our physical circumstances, especially where there's blockages and obstacles and challenges and restrictions and limitations. And we're going to be moving up into the headspace in a very, very pressurized and rapid kind of way. Now, Gemini season, in my particular opinion, is the season that things kind of get a little bit cray-cray, a little bit accelerated. It's almost as if the universe kind of hits that fast forward button. We are very divided. Gemini energy, of course, represented by the twins. We have a lot to debate. We have a lot of pros and cons lists happening here. And because there is such a division in ourselves and in the world, Gemini season is about us trying to find that common ground, that compromise point. Yes, we need to kind of expand upon some thoughts and ideas and perspectives for sure. But there is that 1 foot in the old, 1 foot in the new, 1 foot in the ego, 1 foot in the intuitive soul self, 1 foot really kind of pushing for change, the other foot wanting to stay into what is tried, tested, true, and familiar. So although we have that particular transition taking place, the major event taking place this week will be popping off on the 24th, the 25th, depending on where it is that you're at, depending on the time zone here. But I'm talking about Saturn. Saturn being the Lord of Karma, ruling over roles, responsibilities, systems, structures, foundations, willpower, discipline, is completing his time in this Pisces energy, and Saturn will be moving into Aries energy here on the 24th. Now, first of all, this wraps up a 30-year chapter, 30-year cycle. This is the essential beginning of the end of the old world, the beginning of the new world. But again, we're in the year of 9, so this is a practice run. This is a dress rehearsal. I consider this to be the week that we move into what I'm calling the boomerang energies, because this is going to come back time and time again, especially hitting us right where we're currently at in the fall. So the Saturn energy is definitely going to be the heaviest here this week because we're sitting at the 29th critical crisis degree in this Pisces energy. The death, the endings, the closures have to take place in order for the new beginnings to actually have a space to be born into. And so there's going to be a heaviness, a weight, a seriousness, a somberness, a darkness, a little bit of a depression energy playing in the background. Now, that's not to say that we don't have some positive things popping off here this week. We definitely do. However, with a major heavy hitting planet like Saturn, who basically rules and owns this earthly matrix, this is going to be no joke. Okay, so we have to consider the fact that, again, this is a major transition happening. I did talk about this in great detail and great length, not only in my 2025 year ahead reading overview that is out here on YouTube, free to the public, but of course I did a whole mini course on this over on my Patreon as well. And so we're going to kind of be dipping our toe into a little bit of a refresher there over on Patreon here this week on what Saturn moving into Aries is all about, because of course Neptune is already there. And having Neptune and Saturn come together in this conjunction is just going to be something that we can't even really pinpoint or put our finger on, because none of us have been alive to ever experience this. So we can make guesses, we can make predictions on how this energy is going to manifest, but realistically speaking, we all have a front row seat to observe astrology doing things that have never been done in our lifetimes. And of course, this is also the last week that Mercury, ruler of the mental plane, ruler of information, communication, how it is that we express ourselves, will be in Taurus energy. We have Mercury moving into his rulership in Gemini energy here on the 25th prior to the 26th, which of course is the new moon in Gemini. If you have not taken a listen to the May energy overview over on my Patreon, I would definitely recommend you do that, because we have a lot coming at us here this week. So before I jump into the ascension symptoms that we are definitely going to be just kind of, I'm going to say, thrown wildcard energies with here this week, how they're going to manifest is really going to be individualized to our own healing journey experience. We have a collective shift taking place. And I think if you're being real, raw, and really honest and vulnerable with yourself, you probably would have noticed that the collective kind of, shit hit the fan here this last week. People went cray-cray. You could feel the agitation. You could feel the aggression. You could feel the anger kind of creeping up in those dark corners in people's mind space and emotional space. And of course, yeah, I know that the full moon in Scorpio kind of, activated an emotional tsunami, if you will. And that tsunami wave is still kind of coming at us. And it's about to crash upon us here this week and kind of cleanse and remove all of the structures, the debris that is no longer needed here in our physical realms. It's going to clear out a lot of junk, a lot of gunk for us. But again, transitional phases are never fun. So I have a lot to say about it. Before I jump into all that, let me just start off by saying thank you. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for liking, for sharing, for commenting, for dropping emojis in the comment section below. I want to thank those of you that continue to support in dropping those beautiful emojis, even on my mini shorts, my previews for those longer sessions that, of course, have now relocated over to my Patreon. If you haven't jumped over to Patreon as of yet, I definitely recommend you do so. There is a free trial that you can be tapping into for, I think it's 7 days, to see what it is that you're kind of currently missing. And with the turbulent energies coming at us here this week, and I'm going to say if you're a sensitive soul, sensitive being, and you need a little bit more energetic support, a little bit more community in order to keep your head above these emotional and karmic waters, that's where we're at. Jump on over. Thank those of you that, of course, have already jumped over to Patreon. We are definitely building a pretty legit community over there. I am super excited to see how many people are actually gravitating towards coming over to Patreon, even though I know a lot of y'all have had a lot of resistance to jumping over to Patreon. I get it. But at the same time, we are definitely talking in real time about some of these very dramatic energy shifts taking place, about some of the ascension symptoms that pop off because of it, how to do energetic protection, how to cleanse your auric field, how to do all of the things so that you're not going to be swept away with the collective cray-cray when it hits. And it's definitely going to be hitting a new level of cray-cray here this week. I want to thank those of you that continue to jump over to my website and pre-order your copy of my book coming out here in early June. Thank you so much for the love and support there as well. And again, just a reminder, if you don't have your moon guide or that May energy guide in front of you, you're going to want to get that. We have that last quarter moon coming up in Aquarius energy that ties into last lunar cycle. So if you have last month's moon guide available, you're going to want to reference what that last quarter moon at 1 degree Aquarius was all about, because that was where we kind of dipped our toe into, what needed to end and die. Here, this time around at 29 degrees, we're not messing around. There's going to be a swift removal, swift cut off of anything that is not meant for you, anything that is holding you back, anything that is restricting you from moving on and moving forward. There is going to be a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, disconnect of sorts coming at you. And it would be very, very much recommended that you prepare for it. So again, that moon guide and that May energy guide is the only kind of resource that you need to navigate these particular energies. And, you're definitely going to need to double down on a little bit of reassurance and a little bit of assistance here, specifically as we kind of walk over the bridge, so to speak, from Taurus season to Gemini season, from this old lunar cycle into this new lunar cycle, and more specifically, Saturn at that 29th critical crisis karmic degree of Pisces energy and into the new world, the new earth, when he shifts into Aries. So with all of that being said, let's jump into this week. This week coming at us, what we think it's going to manifest for us, and of course the ascension symptoms that will likely pop off because of it. So I do want to kind of just emphasize, refresh, remind you that Saturn, he rules this place, okay? He is responsible for the structures and foundation of this earthly matrix that we live in, good, bad, or otherwise, doesn't matter how you feel about it. He is the creator, the architect of this particular earth realm. And so, Saturn doesn't mess around, considering the fact that just a couple weeks ago, we just rewrote our soul contracts. We, signed, sealed, and delivered all of that with Saturn and the North Node and Venus and the Moon and Pisces, all of that jazz. This is, again, the final stage of the deconstruction, the dissolution, if you will, of the old world that the old self had built based off of those old ideologies, that old way of thinking, that old way of being. This new version of self has been around long enough to feel confident enough and anchored in enough to do the hard things, to do what needs to be done. The life that you want is on the other side of the shit that you're resisting and doing. And now it's time to boss up, to get your shit together and to do the hard things. Now, the reason why I want to kind of refresh and remind you of this absolute critical crisis degree that we've been sitting at, that we will continue to sit in at this 29 critical crisis degree until we shift into that 0 degree, which is just as crazy, just as potent, because there's no direction with raw energy at a 0 degree. When I say to you that this week, that tsunami wave that got triggered under that full moon in Scorpio is going to hit land, is going to make the impact, is going to clean sweep through your life, mind, body, soul, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and kind of sweep through and remove the junk, the gunk, the residue that is no longer needed in your life, this is going to create some abrupt endings and closures. Okay, so we've been working on it, but it's been at a slow and steady pace. There's a lot of attachments that many of us are still very aware of that need to go, that we've been, just procrastinating on. This is going to be the week that you cannot avoid it, that you cannot turn a blind eye to it. Maybe your relationship is falling apart. Maybe your job is falling apart. Maybe your living situation is falling apart. Maybe your friends are falling apart. Doesn't matter. There's some sort of ending and closure. There's some sort of feeling that something is coming to an absolute end. Now, again, it all comes down to perspective. If you want to choose to look at that as a loss, by all means, continue to drag yourself through a process that wasn't meant to be this hard. You cannot lose anything that was meant for you. If you're losing a relationship, that relationship was not in your best interest. If you are losing a job, that job was not a resonant vibration and frequency to help you be the co-creator of your reality. Whatever you're perceiving as a loss is actually the universe giving you a clean slate to actively boss the F up, take control of your life, and start co-creating with the universe to create a realm and reality that is a perfect vibratory match for this new version of self that has new wants, needs, and desires, new ideas, new values, new worth within yourself. So again, it all comes down to perspective. I know that Saturn, typically speaking, brings on that negative ass narrative and brings the mean girls out to play. It is a hard, let's call it narrative, to break down and break through and flip the script in a more positive way. But we have to understand that Pisces energy, although it is shadow work, although it is death endings and closures, although it is deep emotional and karmic and spiritual, I'm going to say death, but essentially healing. Pisces energy is all about inspiration and creativity and dreams and intuition and a higher calling. And so again, the dualistic polarized nature of those fish kind of chasing each other, one fish builds while the other fish comes right behind and kind of deconstructs. This is part and parcel of the karmic soul contracts that we just kind of renewed or, improved, or in some cases canceled and started a fresh one just a couple of weeks ago. This is the, let's call it, physical evidence in your physical realm, mirroring back to you the karmic contracts that your soul just signed up for. So if your soul just signed up for a karmic mission, a karmic chapter where, again, you need to be the co-creator of your own reality, then you're not going to be able to keep that 9 to 5. If you actually have done the work within yourself to reach new levels of loving yourself, of reaching new levels of self-confidence, self-esteem, new worth, new values, understanding what it is that you actually believe that you're deserving of, you're probably not going to keep a hold of that toxic, dysfunctional ass relationship for much longer. This shit has got to go. This is the clean sweep. We're moving into the new earth, the new foundation, a clean space for us to build something new. You cannot build something new when the remnants of the old are still alive and well and in your face. Just can't happen. Just does not work. So does it feel good to face endings, deaths, closures in your life? Absolutely not. But depending on your perspective, depending on your narrative, depending on the way that you're choosing to frame these particular situations, it really does not need to be more painful than it actually needs to be. We make things worse. We perceive it as a loss. We perceive it as something being taken away from us. I doubled down. I want to reassure you that you will never lose anything that was truly meant for you. Okay, there's a time, there's a place, there's a space for all of it. And if something is coming to an end, then it has run its course. Let's all just kind of, pluck out the silver linings. Let's all just look at this as a tough love life lesson that we needed to learn the hard way. Of course, we're going to pluck out that wisdom, that knowledge. We're going to integrate it into our soul, into our being, mind, body, and soul on all levels, all timelines, all dimensions. We are going to do the best that we can to take the fragments of our soul space, piece it back together, smush it back together in a better way, in a bigger, better way than we've been operating previous to this. And so this is just part and parcel and part of the process of, again, shedding the layers of the ego self and really rising up in this new version of self that is heart and soul led. Does it feel good? No. Is it supposed to? Absolutely not. Does something beautiful always follow one of the darkest days? You bet your bottom dollar it does. So you just have to be optimistic, hopeful, and have the attitude of gratitude for the experience that you were gifted with, even though it is now coming to an end. So we're definitely going to watch the collective, the unconscious collective, I should say, lose their absolute shit here this week while that clean sweep is just taking over the earth plane and removing all of the systems, structures, routines, people, places, and things that are no longer a vibratory match. When you're consciously aware of it, you can have a better understanding of it. You can flip the script in a more empowering and encouraging type of way so that you don't lose yourself to the shadow parts of this ego programming that for sure is going to throw a tantrum, for sure is going to come out to play here this week. So with that ending, with that closure, what do we have? We have a lot of heart activations. There's a heaviness on our heart space. There is a sense of ending. There is a sense of grief. There is a sense of mourning to a certain extent. We have to honor that. We can't disregard that. That is part and parcel of watching this transition take place. You do have to acknowledge those thoughts, those feelings, that process that you're inner realm and outer realm is going through, so that again, we don't create more anxiety, more pain, more trauma than there actually needs to be. We have to trust the fact that these heart activations, although they're not fun, they are doing the job in breaking up the energy blockages in our physical body so that the energy can start flowing a lot more easily, a lot more gracefully, and bringing in the energy codes that we've already received, that we've already downloaded, that haven't been unpacked as of yet. This, again, just a reminder, Venus, the goddess of love, beauty, worth, pleasure, and money, she is now out of her post-retrograde shadow period. She is still very much in this Aries energy. The dark feminine energy is rising, which means that you're not going to mess around. This is mama bear energy. We all have it within us. We are no longer settling for people, places, and things that make us feel less than we are able to make ourselves feel. We have done the work to boss ourselves up and treat ourselves a little bit better. Therefore, we have to create those boundaries in our external realm. We are not going back. We are not settling. We are not dimming our light. We are not downgrading. We are moving on and moving forward, and that requires us to manage the hurt, manage the pain, swallow it up, and also continue to charge on with that warrior type of spirit to fight for what it is that we want, we need, we desire in our physical realm, especially where relationships and money matters are concerned. But of course, it doesn't feel good. It is not supposed to. Now, I want to talk about the top of the head. I'm going to try my best to kind of stay in the realm of being organized here. Although if you've been with me for any amount of time, you would know that's a very hard task for me to follow within myself because I am a jumper. I am a little bit of a scatterbrain in that way, but I'm going to try to do my best. Let's take it to the top. The crown activations are still going to be very intense here this week. We talked about it last week. This week, I feel like, again, there is a high probability that your hair may actually hurt. Last week, we talked about how the hair is actually our spiritual antenna to pick up on the subtle energies of our environment. And, there's a lot of issues with that hair space. And because we're going through a collective bridge adjustment here this week, the crown is definitely going to be popping off. Now, that may mean headaches, moving headaches, that your hair hurts, that your head feels like a bobblehead bigger than your actual body. It could be that your head just feels like it weighs a lot more than it typically does feel on a day-to-day. However that manifests for you, there's going to be a lot of active pressure in that headspace. Now, when we come down a little bit, just a little bit to the forehead here, we are definitely going to have an experience here this week where our third eye is kind of quivering, where it's vibrating, where it's kind of shaking. Now, that being said, we are going through a major adjustment in our awareness, in our consciousness, and in our vision. So although that third eye is rapidly trying to kind of process and therefore progress in a different realm of perception and perspective, the eye changes, the visual eye changes are going to be intense as well. This could mean eye irritation, like you got something in your eye. Maybe one eye is just constantly watering. Maybe you even have a little bit of a rash or irritation around the skin of your eye. Maybe your eyelids are getting a little bit swollen. Maybe your tear ducts feel like they're a little bit puffy. Hopefully, we can avoid, creating styes in our eye, because that would just be an obstruction to what it is that we're looking at in our physical realm. Either way, there's going to be some sort of eye irritation, actual vision changes. Again, I feel like it's going to feel more so like there's something in our eye that we can't see the vision clearly. We can't see the actual reality clearly. And so again, it doesn't feel good to have that sensation of something stuck in your eye or an irritation around the eye. But the way that we are changing our perspective, the way that our physical landscape is changing, the way that the options, the possibilities for our future path and direction is changing, all of that is very, very concentrated in the gunk of our eye space. So we want to pay special attention to what's going on in our eyes, especially if it's one eye over the other. Left versus right is a major significance, can give us very, very interesting hints and clues on, what we have to address within us. Again, just a reminder, all of these symptoms are mirroring back to us what it is that we're failing to acknowledge, either intuitively or in our physical realm. So if you're having major eye irritations, you do have to bring the attention to this eye. You do have to kind of do the detective work, if you will, to unpack why this eye issue is manifesting for you first and foremost. Now, here in these Ascension Forecasts, we talk about, the collective's energy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have the same Ascension symptoms as the collective. And even more than that, you could have them at a varying degree than other people, depending on, again, the work that you've been doing within yourself. So we're going to continue in this headspace for a second. There's going to be an ear clicking. Now, I don't mean download with like that high pitch, that high ringing in your ear. I'm talking like it feels like there is a waterlogged situation in one of your ears. Hopefully it's only one. If it's both, then it's because you're really not wanting to hear a lot of information and details that are coming at you here in your physical realm. But again, this wah-wah sensation, this clicking in your ear, this waterlogged sensation in your ear, this is indicative of where it is that you're holding pressure in your headspace, and very connected to that third eye issue, where pressure is definitely, putting a little bit of a skew on your eyeballs as well, your physical eyeballs. But when it comes to the ears, it's because we're not listening, or we are listening, we just don't like what we're hearing. And it could be from the physical realm, or it could be from your intuition, from your spiritual realm. Again, indicator, left versus right. Pay attention to what's going on in your body. Your body is sending you messages. It's up to you to learn the language in order to decode it, therefore feel it, and then eventually heal it. So in this headspace that we're, currently talking about here, we talked about the physical symptoms, but may I also just kind of give you this cautionary note. We have the Sun and Uranus conjuncting. Then we have that last quarter moon in Aquarius. Then the Sun moves into Gemini. That is a lot of headspace pressure. It's a lot of electricity. It's a lot of rapid, I'm going to say, processing where our headspace is concerned. When I say to you that it may feel a little bit like a manic episode, that is a very real thing, okay? It's almost as if the windows in our brain, there's too many tabs open. There's music coming from somewheres. There's, lottery wins coming from somewheres. There's flashing lights. Even though we are thinking about a lot of things, even though we are dealing with some complex ideas and processing them from different perspectives, it could feel like you're not able to complete a singular thought. So when I say that it may feel like your brain is fried, I'm not joking. There's a lot of electricity coming at us here this week. There's a lot of perspective shifting here this week. There are a lot of things going to be popping off here this week that are not going to be easily digestible when they're actually happening. And it is going to take a little bit of time to actually make sense of it. And again, we are pushing to make sense of things on a timeline that is not natural, not organic. That's our ego programming pushing to resolve all of these issues overnight. And because of the extra amount of added anxiety and pressure that we're creating within ourselves, you may just feel like your head needs to explode. Not that it's going to explode, that it needs to explode just to get it over with. Okay? There is going to be a really strong need in order for you to test your ability to override a lot of the chaos and craziness in your headspace. This is when we put into practice what it is that we've learned. This is when we need to ground, when we need to anchor, when we need to come back into our bodies. Now, if you've been with me for any amount of time, you probably would remember that when we all came into Taurus season, I said it's going to be like at a snail's pace. It is going to be so slow and steady that it's going to feel like we're not moving at all. And everybody kind of got, that vibe. We felt that right out of the gate. And I also said that you're going to want to learn to have the attitude of gratitude for this slow ass pace, because when we move into Gemini season and the universe hits that fast forward button, you are going to wish that we could come back to this slow, steady, baby step type of energy that we're currently sitting in as I come to you here Friday evening live. Now, that being said, we are wasting no time when we get thrown into all of those air energies, specifically when the sun moves into Gemini. There is going to be such a difference, such an acceleration, such an overwhelming headspace that is why we feel cray-cray. That is when we are going to reflect back on the slow, steady, stabilizing pace that Taurus season has been. Although it's been frustrating to live in it, we are going to look back upon it and suddenly we're going to realize, damn, I really should just have leaned into having that downtime, having that break, having that slow, steady pace, because we are not going to be getting that slow, steady pace for months and months to come. So we're kind of hitting the gas. Okay. So if you kind of look at it this way, we've been sitting in our car, just, one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake, just spinning our tires, creating a lot of fluff, a lot of smoke, if you will. Haven't been able to see a damn thing. And we're not even waiting for that smoke to clear. Suddenly we take the foot off the brake, the gas is still down, and the tires actually grip and jolt us forward, and we're not in control. There is this swaying of the car going back and forth because we're not stabilized. We're not in control. And it's almost like that car gets out of control is so fast and to a certain extent that we kind of get a little bit like, whoa, where did that come from? It's going to jolt us. And I want you to be prepared for this, because as hard as it may be to manage your own shit, manage your own energy, it's going to be even harder to not engage with those unconscious people out in the collective that are going to be losing their mind in all of the wrong ways. Considering the fact that we are in the final days of Saturn being in Pisces energy, where literally what we've been experiencing for the past 2 years with Saturn in this Pisces energy is a major, major wave of people choosing to leave the earth, a major wave of people checking out in all different ways and all different, avenues, not only in their physical realm, but losing their minds. This has been spiritual psychosis one-on-one. And then we move into Gemini season that rules over the mind. And then Saturn moves into Aries energy where we want to burn the whole world down. Okay. Get your armor on. Make sure that those clasps are tight. Make sure that you got a grip on your energetic sword, so to speak, because you're going to have to cut through a lot of that energetic bullshit here this week. Okay. Back to the physical form. Now I want to take you down to the mouth. The mouth has been an area of frustration for a very long time. I want to take you back even, when Mercury first moved into Aries energy before he retrograded and then moved back through the Aries energy, and he's now in Taurus energy. There has been a lot of spice. There's been a lot that we needed to say. There's been a lot of inflammation in the mouth, a lot of issues with the gums, with the teeth. Since Mercury has been in this Taurus energy, it has affected more so the voice than the actual mouth and tongue and roof of the mouth and gums and teeth and what have you. Because again, with Mercury in Taurus energy, we're more so quiet. We don't really, if there's not something worth talking about, we don't want to talk about it. But even more than that, we've had this truth building within us. And this truth is going to rock the boat in major ways. And this truth is going to change things. And once you say it, you can't unsay it. And many of us have gotten to the point, have been sitting at the point where, again, we don't really want to say these things, but we know that we have to say these things because it is part of wrapping up the chapter that Saturn and Pisces is pushing for. And we are this week going to have the tension, the cluster F in our throat chakra. So we've been experiencing, again, mouth and throat dysfunction. This is going to continue, I would say, into this week. It is radiating back into the neck because we're carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders right now. Again, we're carrying a lot of karmic and energetic and emotional and mental and spiritual weight that doesn't even belong to us. So, to all the alchemists out there, we really have to sort through this week what of the collectives we're willing to continue to carry into the new world and what of the collectives we're willing to throw back into the collective and let them either carry it themselves or suffocate under the weight of the things that they're not willing to deal with. We are coming to the point, and this is a very hard thing for a lot of the energy workers out there that, did come to Earth at this time in order to help raise the vibration, the frequency, the consciousness of humanity, to give us a little bit of a chance in hell to beat this bad guy once and for all. Although, again, not that I want to be a Debbie Downer, but we're not doing a very good job. We are at the point as energy workers, as alchemists, where we cannot continue to carry the load of the collective, especially into the new Earth that essentially is kicking off here when Saturn moves into Aries energy. And so we've been sitting in this Pisces energy. That is the collective energy. We did feel like there hasn't been any boundaries. We're taking on the weight of the world, that the world is failing to kind of, heal on their own. And this is going to be the last hurrah. If you are doing the work to take from the collective, to alchemize that into something better, more powerful, and give it back to the collective, you need to make the appropriate adjustments within yourself this week, because we are not carrying the karmic, mental, emotional, spiritual, physical, or even any kind of baggage. We're not carrying any baggage that does not belong to us. We're not carrying that into the new world. It's just not happening. So there is going to be quite an adjustment for a lot of people, but that immediate pressure that is bringing attention to what it is that we want to say, that we haven't said, bringing attention to the weight that we've been carrying that does not belong to us, that we need to put that emotional baggage down and let that kind of just, go back to the owner, so to speak. There is more of an individualized path and journey emerging for the light workers, specifically with Saturn and Neptune both going to be in this Aries energy. This is the individual. We are separating away from the collective to individualize our own damn selves, understand what we need to be doing for our own life path, our own soul contracts, our own health and wellness first and foremost, so that, again, just a reminder here, the change that we all want to see in the world, it all starts with us. We have to be the change in our own individual lives in order for that particular vibration and frequency to overflow from our individual cups to go back into the collective. And it doesn't need to be such a, I'm going to say, specified process and procedure that most of the energy workers out there for, I'm going to say, the last, 15, 20 years, although the majority of the people that just kind of woke up happened through the pandemic. If you've been awakened and doing this work prior, to 2020, this is going to be a major relief for you, but it's also going to be a little bit more of an identity crisis for you, because you're going to have to learn to carry your own shit, to worry about your own damn self, to create a specific boundary between you and the collective so that you're not constantly taking the collective's shadow on. This is going to be a very different ball game. And again, when I say to you that we're crossing bridges, that we're going to have immediate evidence that we're in a new world of here this week. I'm not joking. I'm not downplaying. So buckle up, put your helmets on, because it is going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride. I'm coming back to the neck and to the throat thing. This week, watch out for choking on your words. Watch out for choking on air. Watch out for choking on spit. And I mean that in the nicest way. Reason being, as you know, we've been going through a recalibration. Yes, I'm going to bring the car analogy out to play again because it's just appropriate. In a car, there are different systems, and all of those systems have to be working at their ultimate capacity, their optimal capacity as well. And they all have to be timed with each other in order to make that car work. The timing has been off, okay? And this week, the timing is trying to correct itself, but it's still a bumpy adjustment. So when I say to you that you're going to choke on your words or choke on air or choke on spit, it's because the automatic body functionings that we don't think of, like breathing and swallowing and digestion and all that kind of stuff, that is the timing that is now being tweaked and optimized. And so we're going to have some weird processes kind of get glitched out in our bodily systems that most of us don't even think about on a regular, because these are the energetic timing switches that need to be recalibrated in order for us to be functioning, all of our systems functioning not only optimally, but at the same time with each other, so that we can be operating from a sense of completion, from a sense of wholeness, instead of this, dysfunction of having your head working really well, but the body's not working so great, or your emotional intelligence working, but your mental health isn't so great. All of these things, they've been out of whack, and we're trying to bring them back into whack. And with that being said, the bulk of the recalibration that we've been going through since eclipse and retrograde season is the hardest part is over. But now it's like the timing. We have to adjust all the different timing of the systems in order to be functioning well and in well timing and well alignment. So pay attention when you have those like little glitches where you're choking on air or you're choking on your own spit, or, your feet just suddenly decide not to work, or, all of these just daily things that are so automatic and habitual for us. Suddenly there's going to be a glitch where we're like, damn, I didn't realize that I had to think about, breathing and swallowing and chewing and all of this stuff. I didn't know I had to think about that. You're going to have to think about it this week because everything is changing. Now, I want to talk about, I guess we talked about the neck. I guess we talked about the weight on the shoulders. That weight is going to be extended down into your arms, and specifically into your hands and to your fingers. Why? Because the palm chakras that we started working on opening approximately 1.5 to 2 years ago, when we brought the creator abilities online that many of us have been a slow, steady practice start with, we are about to move into new earth. Saturn moving into Aries energy is rebuilding from scratch. Saturn is structures and foundations. Aries energy not only is ego avatar, so we're again building, recreating, restructuring, reformatting this new version of self, but on the grander scale, if you will, we're in a brand new chapter. Aries energy is the very first sign of the zodiac. It is the initial, let's call it ignition, fire, spark, flame that brings something new to life. It is the passion, the desire, the assertiveness that we need in order to take action, make moves, and actually build something that resonates with us. So we're talking about building, we're talking about creating. Those palm chakras in our hands are the creator abilities. This is why many of us have been having problems with our hands, with our wrists, with our elbows, with our arms. This week, there's going to be this surge of energy that activates the palm chakras in a way that probably won't be comfortable. Now, you may have arm tingling, arm weakness. You could have just like an ache in your arms. There could be muscle spasms in your arms. Maybe you hit your funny bone, which newsflash isn't so funny. You could have, carpal tunnel type of situation in your wrists where your wrists just aren't strong enough to hold that coffee cup in the morning. You could have finger cramps. May I also just say, look out for puffiness in your hands, specifically the fingers as well. With this last surge of Piscean energy coming from Saturn and the tsunami wave from that full moon in Scorpio actually landing, there's a lot of inflammation where water is concerned. So not only just in your hands, but maybe you're having, edema in your ankles, in your feet, in your legs. Again, we store fear in the lower extremities. We'll talk about that a little bit more when we get to it. But I'm just talking about the fact that our creator abilities, our palm chakras are getting an upgrade. And when that upgrade happens, there's likely going to be glitches from your shoulders down to your fingertips. And if you are experiencing situations where maybe you're having like little accidents with your hands, maybe you jam your finger in the door, maybe you, and I know this sounds like, petty and trivial, but maybe you break all your nails. I'm not saying like, oh, that's a big, tragedy, but at the same time, it's bringing attention to your fingertips. That's where the energy comes out of. Again, your left hand brings the energy in, your right hand shoots that energy out. And so again, when we have, issues popping off with the hands or the fingers, it's to bring attention to what it is that you're actually putting hands on here in this physical realm, your active role in what it is that you're building and creating. And we all need to get our shit together very quickly here, because when Saturn moves into this Aries energy and conjuncts Neptune right away, our creator abilities are going to be on, they're going to be activated, they're going to be very pressurized, and we're not going to know what to do with our hands. And idle hands are a dangerous thing. And so many of us are resistant to essentially bossing up and taking accountability and responsibility for the realm and reality in which we've previously created that we're trying to dissolve and deconstruct at this present moment. But we should have learned our lesson from the past. We should have, really plucked out the wisdom and knowledge from some of those particular struggles. And we should be recalibrating our inner realm and our outer realm so we can bring these creator abilities online and not be afraid to use it. That is a big thing here. A lot of people don't know what they want. A lot of people don't know what path, what direction they want to go in from here. And how are you supposed to create anything without a clear vision? And so one of the hardest things in life, I think, is figuring out A, what you want, and then B, actually accepting it. One of the things that I think triggers most people is, what if your dreams actually came true? We all know how to deal with disappointment and defeat. We all know, we can set ourselves up like, oh, that probably won't happen, but I'm still going to go for it anyways, because we can accept that things aren't going to work out. But not very many of us have a well-regulated central nervous system at this particular point in this particular juncture to actually accept the goal, the vision, the dream handed to us. That is a fearful thing. That is a paralyzing thing. And again, we have a lot of shadow work to do to unpack that and prepare our central nervous system to accept the kind of life that matches our dreams, our visions, our reality. If you want to do a little bit more work on that, again, jump over to Patreon. We do shadow work posts. We do unpacking posts. We do recalibration posts. We do all kinds of stuff over on Patreon that helps you to do the work. Everybody asks me, you go on and on and on every week about lean in, do the work. What is the work? Well, jump over to Patreon, because that's where the people are doing the work. And although it's hard, nobody's going to tell you that it's not hard. There's not one person that says that doing this work isn't life-changing, isn't somehow rewarding, even through the hardest parts. So we really have to kind of flip the script on that particular kind of understanding that healing is painful. Growth is painful. Giving birth is painful. creating something painful. Okay, but well worth it once it's done. In the end, you can look back on it and you have this ability to say, even though you had to walk through hell, geez, you know what? I'm glad I did that. I can see now how that was needed. I can see how my life is better off for it and how I'm better off for it. But you gotta walk through it, right? Nobody who's walking through hell wants to be walking through hell, and nobody walking through hell wants to set up camp there. You don't stop in the midst of walking through hell. You continue on, you move through it, and then you can look back on it and say, you know what? Wasn't a great time, but I'm glad it happened. Okay? That will happen. Double down on that. I watch it each and every single day. My community, my clients, every day reassure me that the hardest parts of life that they've been going through as of late have 100% been worth it. That's where you need to get at. That's where you need to be. Okay, so we're going down a little bit further in the body. I want to talk about the solar plexus. Yes, I'm jumping over the heart space because, of course, you should know by now that we're always going to have heart activations. We specifically have the Sun, Uranus, and Venus kind of doing a little bit of a pop-off here to set the tone for the week that we're about to have, which means that we have to expect heart activations. We already talked about the sadness, the grief, the mourning energy coming from the death endings and closures that are going to be emphasized in that heart space. I want to take you a little bit lower to that, though. I want to take you to the solar plexus because the solar plexus is getting a major upgrade here this week. And we have to understand that that is going to have a major impact on our digestion. We've been talking regularly about how digestion is always on the list of ascension symptoms because, again, ascension symptoms stem out of your central nervous system. We have so many nerves in our digestive system that how are we supposed to have central nervous system activations without our digestion being affected in one way or another? Digestion is always going to be flip-floppy. This week, I think, though, we're going to have more gas than anything else. Air bubbles under the ribs, gas that you can't get rid of, constant either attempting to belch or get it to come out the other way. There's a lot of air in the cosmos coming at us this week, which means that there's going to be a lot of air illuminated within us. A lot of gas, a lot of bubble guts be popping within us this week. I also want to kind of just remind you that when we have these energetic waves or this essential tsunami wave of energetic emotion that got triggered and activated under that full moon in Scorpio that is going to be hitting ground and landing here this week, when we have these waves of energy kind of crash over us, it does affect not only the waves of ascension symptoms that come out of nowheres, but it also affects our temperature. Temperature fluctuations are on the list here this week. Here's what I'm going to say to you. The lower chakras, so let's talk from the heart space down, probably going to be super cold, where temperature is concerned, specifically cold feet. Why? Because we're leaving the Pisces energy. Pisces energy rules the feet. We have cold feet because we're moving on and moving forward in a path and direction that we haven't seen clearly yet. So that makes sense. From the heart space up to the crown, I would say that we're going to have a lot of hot flashes, a lot of heat waves. And again, pay attention. Maybe it's not, clean cut like that for you from, the heart space up to the heart space down. Maybe it's the left side versus the right side. Maybe it's the front of your body versus the back of your body. Pay attention. This manifests different for everyone. And paying attention to how it manifests could be the indicator that you need in order to unpack the pain and trauma energy blockages in your body that are creating these ascension symptoms from the beginning. So pay attention to the temperature fluctuations. With those temperature fluctuations, I think that in our sleep state, which is likely going to be disrupted as well, there's going to be a lot of sweaty cocoon situations taking place here this week in our sleep state because we're doing a very deep purge in our unconscious self here this week. And that just screams sweating in your sleep to me. That also screams a new level of lucid dreaming or astral projections. This also screams very cryptic type of, now I don't want to like frighten anybody here, but parasitic attachments taking place in your dreamscape. Doesn't mean nightmare. It just means that there are, what do I want to call it? Complex forces of nature that tend to test us in a time of tribulation and a time of adjustment. There's major collective adjustments happening here this week, which means that, again, in the sleep realm, the astral realm, the dark is going to come out to play. We're in the darkest days of the final time of Saturn being in this 29th degree in Pisces energy. And just a note here, in case you're not aware, when I called it the boomerang type of energy, it's because we're going to be back in this exact same situation in the fall. So pay attention, especially to your dreams if they're changing very dramatically, because there's going to be a cryptic message that's going to tie into a situation and a circumstance that we're going to have to revisit in the fall. But even more than that, this week, I feel like daydreams are going to be even more dominant than some of the sleep messages in our unconscious state. And I think that daydream is getting jolted and turned all the way up for good reason, because again, Pisces energy is the dreamer, but it's almost like we have to get a little bit of a reminder of what that dream actually is, because when Saturn moves into that Aries energy and meets up with Neptune, who is the dreamer of the zodiac in this Aries energy already, now it's going to be time to really kind of cultivate that fire, spark, and flame within us in order to focus in on what that dream, goal, and vision actually is for us to pursue. Because again, we're not messing around in that Aries energy. It is time to actually take action and make moves in order to co-create and therefore build and manifest the inner realm vision, goal, and dream that has been keeping us kind of fueled up, hyper fixated, and excited on what could possibly be. That's been helping us get through the hard parts. And we're coming to a particular juncture point where we're going to have major opportunities to bring pluck out of our intuition, out of our dream state, out of our downloads, pluck certain aspects out of that intangible, vision, if you will, and bring them to life, materialize them, make them tangible here in this physical realm. So this brings me down to about the waste type of arena. And again, we talked last week about how there's major recoding going on to our survival programming, our ego programming, and that is stored in the, base of our spine between our hips. There is going to be a little bit of tension and rigidity in our hips because, of course, we're still in the final days of Taurus season. That's an earth sign. It rules over our structures. But even more than that, where Saturn is kind of switching things up and he rules over the structures, the formation of our skeletal structure and everything in between, because he's going from water to fire, there's definitely going to be a interchange of emotion, interchange of the structure of our metabolism, our adrenaline, our actual physical energy as well. So we got to pay attention to that. I feel like there is going to be, I don't think it's going to be a constant thing here this week, but I think there's going to be certain instances where all of a sudden, like maybe your hip pops out of joint, or maybe it just doesn't feel in alignment, doesn't feel comfortable walking. Maybe all of a sudden you don't feel strong enough to stand on your own 2 feet. Whatever the case may be, again, we're trying to break up the energetic blockages of fear that are trapped in our lower extremities. So just follow that energy all the way down to your kneecaps, follow it down to your ankles, follow it down to your feet. There is going to be some sort of destabilizing feature that kind of creates a little bit of a whirlwind energy, a little bit of a unstable energy here this week, because of course, things are switching up in a big way, especially in our physical environment. So guys, I'm taking a look at my list. I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover here for this week. I thank you so much for being here. I thank you so much for tuning in. I thank you so much, not only for showing up for me, but for showing up for yourself. We have a major energy week coming at us here this week with a huge list of Ascension symptoms to kind of accompany those energetic changes as well. And so again, I really recommend that you lean in, that you do the work, that you get those resources out there available and in front of you to make sure that you don't lose your damn mind. Again, come back, take a listen to this. And if you need any kind of extra support or extra assistance, please jump over to my Patreon, where we have a whole community to remind you that you're not going through it by yourself, that you're not on your own, that you're not losing your damn mind, you're not cray-cray, you're just upgrading. So I thank you so much for tuning in. I send you so much love, and we'll talk to you soon.